Hello folks and welcome back to the channel. It's now April, which means only one thing for flight simmers and VR. The PlayStation 5 console platform is getting a free update to use MSFS 2024 with the PSVR2. And in this video I'm going to give you my thoughts on it, both my concerns, some of the really great things such as why this is a massive deal even for the PC VR community, as well as all the details of the headset itself and what to expect from it. So if you're interested, stick around, stay tuned after a quick word from VRWave. A huge shout out to VRWave for sponsoring and supporting this channel. They produce some fantastic tailored lens inserts for a full range of VR headsets, including Pimax, HTC, Pico, Quest, and also the PlayStation VR2, which I highly recommend you grab a pair of lens inserts because it helps protect those very expensive lenses. And of course, if you do wear glasses, then you can account for astigmatism, nearsightedness, farsightedness, even blue light filter, which helps combat motion sickness and insomnia. I have a very nice 5% discount in the notes below. I urge you check it out and protect your lenses today. Right then, so a monumental release is upon us, something I never thought could even be possible on a console. Microsoft Flight Simulator is getting a PSVR2 native launch. Now, the footage you're seeing today is using the PSVR2 using my computer. And since I've got some experience with this headset, I'm going to give you some of my brutal truths about some of the good points, but also some of the bad points about this particular headset. But there's more to this, because unlike what I'm doing here, which is using the PSVR2 tethered to my PC, Jörg Newman, the head of Microsoft Flight Simulator, has mentioned the fact they've really worked hard to include all of the features of the PSVR2, something we just can't do with the normal connection, say using a computer. For example, we can really utilize foveated rendering and eye tracking thanks to Sony's very nice implementation of eye tracking. But more than that, Jörg Newman has mentioned that the cockpit interactions in the sim have been redesigned to fit the PSVR2 Sense controllers. For example, when using instruments, knobs, switches to interact with, as you know, there's lots of them in a flight sim. Well, you're going to get a very satisfying feeling using the controllers with this new release. Now obviously this running on a console has been a massive technical achievement for the Asobo team, and I still can't quite get my head around if they really managed to pull this off. Although I haven't tried it myself yet. Probably won't either, because I'm not going to buy a PlayStation 5 just to try this. So I'm really relying on you guys in the comments to let me know what is it going to be like. Now of course the big deal here is ensuring smooth frame rate, and something essential to such a visually demanding game is getting the foveated rendering with flexible scaled restoration correct. And Jörg has mentioned that this has been a huge challenge for the team because it impacts the entirety of the rendering pipeline. This though makes me wonder, because Sim Update 5 is going to include many of these optimizations for VR, which will hopefully trickle down into the PC VR side of things. Now, if we just take a look at the PlayStation VR2 footage, both using the standard and Pro consoles, it looks absolutely phenomenal. Bearing in mind though, this is from Asobo themselves, or from Sony. One of the two anyway. I might have to eat my own hat when I said about 6 months ago that they would have to really tone down the graphical fidelity in order to get this to run correctly. Although I still have my doubts, folks, I really do. Especially as the sim can be very demanding in certain areas such as New York or Geneva. Imagine running this with a Payware airport, with a very high fidelity airliner, with heavy weather. I just feel that there is going to be some judders and some performance issues. Absolutely, I think it would be foolish to think this is going to be a perfectly smooth experience out of the box. That's really my only main concern here, because if you think about this from a much wider perspective, this is absolutely massive news for the VR landscape in general, for both the gaming and flight simulation side of things, which is the bulk of this channel. This is going to bring VR back into the mainstream market, which hasn't happened for quite some time, and boy do we need it, especially for the flight sim genre. Not to mention, this is also going to help the optimizations for the VR engine as a separate platform, which Asobo has always said. Hopefully, Sim Update 5 is going to really make a big difference for VR users, whether you are using a Quest or a Somnium VR1, because at the end of the day, all this will trickle down into both engines. For example, recently they've now sorted out the quad view box where you could sometimes see it when in cloud. That's now been fixed alongside some other VR improvements, which is really great to see, and I do feel a lot of the driving force behind this is the new PlayStation VR2 launch. Now let's talk about the perhaps elephant in the room here, especially for someone like me who has all the headsets and can tell you the full story about what the PSVR2 is really like and what to expect. Now, to go through the basic specifications, we have a 2000 by 2040 OLED panel. That's right, it's OLED, which is a big deal. It also supports HDR. That's something that hasn't been mentioned that I'm aware of, but I'd love to see HDR support, folks, because that is a big deal on its own and would be a great feature for the PSVR 2. The refresh rates are both 90 and 120 Hz, although expect probably definitely 90 Hz reprojected to 45 or even 30 frames per second here. You are going to see some artifacts, folks. I think that's just going to be the nature of the beast running on a console. The field of view is acclaimed 110 degrees, although to be fair, with the very nice binocular overlap, it is a very nice place to be, apart from one or two issues. So let's just talk about them now. First of all, this does have Fresnel lenses. That's right, folks, not pancake or aspheric lenses, which we've been so used to now for many years. The Fresnel lenses, in fairness, do have a relatively decent sweet spot for that technology, but at the end of the day, it is a very small sweet spot, much like the Reverb G2, so you'll have to move your head around a lot more than your eyes. It is something you do get used to after a while, but you will have to ensure that every now and then to move the headset back into the optimum position. Also, the biggest issue for me, which is way worse than even the Fresnel lenses, is Mura. Mura is basically panel inconsistencies when it comes to the brightness of the pixels, and it creates a fogging or dirty window effect. Now, in the PSVR 2, sadly, when you want to use that OLED panel the most at night is when it's the worst. It really is absolutely diabolical, folks. I'm sorry to tell you this, and I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but Mura is a really serious issue with its headset, and for me, it was a #1 killer. Now, like I've said, the PSVR 2 does have really good eye tracking, so you're going to get favorited rendering and probably very, very good reprojection as well. After all, it is Sony, although it's a real shame they cheaped out on those panels. Considering the company they are, I would have expected better. The resolution itself is okay. It's certainly not 4K or anywhere close, but perhaps think of it as a Quest 2-ish sort of resolution. Maybe Reverb G2 slightly downsampled. It definitely is not as sharp as a Reverb G2. However, there could be some differences here simply because this is in collaboration with Sony and a native implementation. So I am expecting the PSVR 2 to look better in terms of the overall image quality than using the PC. I will say though, another good thing about the PSVR 2 is it's very comfortable for such a large headset. It hardly weighs anything and it's very well balanced. And of course you are going to get those lovely deep rich OLED colours, and the brightness it's okay, but unfortunately because of that strong Mura, in my opinion, or the filtering effect, whatever it is, it does affect the brightness as well. But in any case, folks, that's enough of the technical stuff. This is a monumental achievement for Asobo, for gaming, for technology in general, and for the console market. And I think it's fantastic that this is here. We are all going to benefit from this release. It's going to bring VR back into the mainstream market, and I really hope it spawns a new generation of flight sim pilots. I would love to know your thoughts and comments. Please do let me know. As I say, I'm not going to be doing a first impressions of the PlayStation 5 PSVR2, but I will be watching and I'll be very intrigued to know how things go with this release. So do let me know. Thanks for watching, folks. Take care, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.